Happy Week 14! I'm Cynthia Frelund, and this is the Numbers Game TNF Primer, a preview of Packers at Lions through the lens of contextualized data, along with a few fun extra facts and stats to know. Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday, and Giving Tuesday, which extends way past just Tuesday, is the best made-up holiday of the year. The only thing that comes close is anything to do with dogs, particularly rescue dogs, but I could argue that is also a part of Giving Tuesday. Some of my favorite places to donate if you're looking for some inspiration are number one, donorschoose.org. You actually get to support teachers who need supplies for their classrooms. You get to pick out the project that you want to support, which is super fun. I like a STEM moment there. Number two, I love dog and animal rescues. Gordy and Clyde, both rescues. Gordy came from Hollywood Huskies. Clyde came from the Detroit Dog Rescue. Number three, food insecurity charities. I try to keep mine local, so for me, that means the LA Regional Food Bank. And last but not least, cancer efforts. Usually you can make your donations, like to the American Cancer Society, in honor of someone you love. And this year, one of my best friends is who I am honoring. I don't want to sound like a PSA, but even $5 or donating an hour of your time totally counts. Thank you for listening and even considering all of that, and even more for choosing to spend some of your time and energy here with me. It means a ton to me. Last week, my model went 14 wins and 2 losses straight up, 9-7 ATS, and 7-9 on totals. That brings my season through 13 weeks to 68.7 straight up, 51.5 ATS, and 52.6 on totals. This is the second matchup between Detroit and Green Bay, this time at Ford Field. The Lions took the first round at Lambeau in Week 9 by a score of 24-14, and they're favored to sweep the series. The spread is 3.5 points, and this go-round, the total is 51.5. This game has interesting playoff implications, not just for the two teams involved and how they finish in the division, but also for the 10-2 Vikings and the 10-2 Eagles. It's not a stretch to say that this game is potentially pivotal in shaping the postseason. When I model out the rest of the season, let's just say an upcoming pesky game with Buffalo could make it really tough on the Lions to secure the 1 seed if they don't get the win this week, considering the relative ease of the Eagles' remaining opponents. As for this matchup, let's start with a high-level look back at what happened in Week 9, and then we'll reset the table to identify an advantage, a strength-on-strength matchup, and a disadvantage for each team based on how they've fared in subsequent weeks and are trending right now in order to make our Week 14 projections. Starting with the Lions offense and Packers defense. Jared Goff completed all 10 of his play-action passes in Week 9 for 84 yards. He's had 2 games where he's been perfect on such passes this season, and considering Goff uses play-action the most on almost 39% of dropbacks, it's a real season-long strength, as he has the second most expected points added and the 5th highest success rate on them. Goff also averaged his longest time before pressure this season in that game at 3.04 seconds. And when he was pressured, he had his quickest time to throw after being pressured at 0.16 seconds. This suggests the Lions' offensive game plan for handling the Packers' pressure worked in that one. So what did they do? A major part of the plan by Detroit was using 2 or more tight ends, which they did on over 56% of snaps. You're going to hear this over and over again, but that was a season high. This is a theme for this entire Week 9 game. Interestingly, the 2 tight end formations pre-snap turned into runs on 71% of those plays, where they averaged their second lowest yards per carry at 3.3. Going one level deeper here, Green Bay played base defense on over 76% of their plays. The Packers' highest rate, not just in a game this season, but since Next Gen Stats started tracking. They also blitzed at a season high rate, almost 35%. That is significantly higher than their season average of about 19%. And by the way, they rank 4th lowest in the NFL in blitz rate. In other words, they adapted their identity. As for the Week 9 recap notes on Jordan Love and the Green Bay offense against Detroit's defense, let's start with Love. Only 37% of his passing yards in that game came off of yak. That's his lowest rate in a game this season. On a per-catch basis, the average was 4.3 yards after the catch per reception, the second fewest in a game all year. However, Josh Jacobs had an extremely productive outing, recording a season high in rushing yards over expected at 52. He also had his second highest explosive run rate at over 23%. His O-line really helped him out, affording him his highest yard before contact average of the season at 3.5 yards. One step deeper into the strategy here shows that the Pack used 11 personnel, so 3 wide receiver sets, on 79% of offensive snaps. That is their season high to date. It's possible to say that the Lions favored slowing the passing potential down, and by doing so, surrendered more in the run game, which Jacobs took full advantage of, especially given how well 11 was working to keep his opportunity strong. As for this week's matchup, let's start right there. The Packers season stats using 11 are great, with the second highest yard per play average at 6.8, along with a league high 28 touchdowns. One advantage for the Packers offense is again Josh Jacobs, who has now forced 77 missed tackles this season, trailing only Derrick Henry, who has 78. Jacobs has racked up almost a third of those over the last 2 weeks, forcing a league high 25 missed tackles. The man forced a missed tackle on every other touch, literally 51%. As of this filming, a relevant sampling of the Lions injury report reads as follows. Levi Onwuzurike, Josh Paschal, and DJ Reader are all non-participants, and that is after Alex Anzalone, Malcolm Rodriguez, and Derek Barnes, along with a lot of others, are already on IR. This is a lot to ask of Jack Campbell, even though the Lion leads the NFL with a 19% run stop rate. One strength-on-strength matchup here is Jordan Love and play-action passing. He's used it at the 16th highest rate, so basically the median, but he has gained a league-leading .41 EPA per dropback with it, including 6 touchdowns to just 1 interception. He also has not been sacked even once on a play-action dropback. However, the Lions defense has the league's best EPA per dropback defending play-action at negative .28, which includes a league most 6 interceptions. One advantage for the Lions defense comes from the blitz, which they've done at the second highest rate in the league since Aiden Hutchinson was lost for the season in week 6. It is over 39%. Love has struggled against the blitz this season. His 5.5 yard per attempt average against it ranks 32nd, which is a big contrast to his 9.4 yard per attempt average against 4 or fewer pass rushers. His EPA per dropback follows the same pattern, second fewest against the blitz and most in the league when not blitzed. The Lions not only blitz a lot, but they do it because it works for them, to the tune of allowing a league-low 62.2 passer rating and the second lowest EPA per dropback. Further, they blitz constantly and consistently, over 30% of the time on all 3 downs, and on 3rd down specifically, they pace the league at 45.4%. And when doing so, they've allowed the second lowest passing success rate on this crucial down. One advantage for the Lions offense comes in the form of Sonic and Knuckles. Jahmyr Gibbs leads all running backs in explosive run rate at 18%. Gibbs and David Montgomery rank 1 and 2 in rushing success rate, and combined they lead all running back duos in missed tackles forced on run plays with 103, and of course, they lead in rushing touchdowns at 21. They also have racked up the 5th most yards after contact among running back duos this season at 1,044. Fun fact, they're also the only running back duo since 2016 to each have 10 or more rushing touchdowns through 13 weeks. The Packers have been loading the box more since their bye, but they've also allowed almost a full yard more per rush when loading the box since week 9. One strength versus strength here is when the Pack doesn't blitz. We already went over how the Packers turned up the blitz rate in week 9 and that isn't their identity. They blitz at the 4th lowest rate as a reminder. Well, Jared Goff has the 2nd highest yard per attempt average at 8.3, the 3rd highest completion percentage at 73%, and is top 4 in both EPA and success rate when not blitzed. To round this out, the Packers have allowed the 2nd fewest EPA with 4 or fewer rushers this season. One advantage for Green Bay's defense, Rashawn Gary. Okay, well, the pressure Rashawn Gary brings, but here's why I say Gary. In week 9, he lined up on the right side of the defense, so against the left tackle, on 80% of snaps, which is more than double his normal rate. Why? To stay away from Penei Sewell for the better opportunity against Taylor Decker. Taylor Decker, who didn't play in the past 2 weeks, and is another one of those non-participants in practice. Dan Skipper has replaced him for 2 games now, where he's allowed 8 or more pressures in each game. He's actually allowed 18 total pressures in 78 snaps, which is a 23.1% rate. That is a large number and a lot more than the 9.9% Decker had allowed. Oh, and Gary leads the Packers with 39 pressures, with 15 of them coming in under 2.5 seconds. One more plus for a pass catcher on each team. Don't worry, there's even more goodness in the spicy and blands as well. For Green Bay, it's Jaden Reed in the slot, where he has the 2nd most receiving yards over expected at 130 and the 3rd highest air yard per target average at 11.8. Reed also runs deeper routes on average from the slot by more than 5 yards per route run. For Detroit, it is Amon-Ra St. Brown in the middle third of the field, where he leads all wide receivers with 35 receptions, has the third most receiving yards at 406, and the most receptions over expected at 5.8. He also has 1,725 receiving yards on targets in the middle third since entering the league in 2021. That is the third most among wideouts over that span. One fun defensive fact here is that Xavier McKinney and Kirby Joseph are tied atop the league with 7 interceptions each. Bottom line, this one ranks 11th of the 13 games this week in confidence, which means a very close finish. My score right now, Detroit 26-24. Keep in mind that means the Packers with the points, and the injury report could drive that to a full Green Bay victory. The Lions win based on a slight edge in pressure on both sides of the ball. Zadarius Smith has generated 17 pressures since his Lions debut in Week 11 at a 20.2 pressure rate, and Jared Goff has averaged 8.9 yards per attempt when under pressure this season, the most in the NFL, along with ranking top 4 or better in both completion percentage and CPOE when under pressure. Let's round this out with our spicy and bland menu. Bland first, remember, these are props that happen in at least 55% of simulations. Number 1, Josh Jacobs to rush for more than 65.5 yards. A banged up defense, so a defense that is trending in the direction of being more vulnerable, along with a running back who's trending up and to the right when it comes to missed tackles and explosive run rate. I have him in the 80s in this one. Number 2, Jahmyr Gibbs to catch more than 2.5 passes. The Packers linebacker unit allowed 17 pass completions last week to the Dolphins, and the Lions completed 9 of 10 for 78 yards against the Packers, with a linebacker as the nearest defender in Week 9. Number 3, Tucker Kraft to have more than 35.5 receiving yards. The tight end has gained 126 yards after the catch over expected this season, 4th most in the league, and 98 of those have come from a tight alignment, which is the most in the NFL. On to the spicies. These happen in at least 48% of simulations, but have the kind of volatility that make the juice worth the squeeze. 2 bland and a spicy is my normal amount of risk. 2 spices and a bland is my preferred amount of risk. So mix and match as you like. Number 1, let's stay with Tucker Kraft. Let's talk about a trip to the end zone. He's tied for the most touchdowns at 4 when aligned as an inline receiver this season, and he leads the Packers with 13 red zone targets. And even though he's usually a red zone defense target, he's still got a 25% target rate against man in the red area, which is often what the Lions play. And he also had some choice words for Kirby Joseph, so let's see how that plays out, which is spicy in and of itself. Number 2, Jared Goff to pass for more than 245.5 yards. Goff has 1,270 yards on under center play action passes this season, 238 more than the next closest QB. I bring this up because he also has an over 50 passing EPA on such throws, which is the 5th most in a season since Next Gen Stats started tracking. This relates to this game in part because the Lions' strategy keeps him from the bad pressure when they do this. Last but not least, Jordan Love to rush for more than 6.5 yards. All that stuff I said about Josh Jacobs' opportunity applies here, plus the fact that I told you that I like the Lions to bring pressure. Love has only topped this in 3 games this season, and he didn't rush for even 1 last week, hence the spice, but I have him slated for at least 11. I'm sorry, but also not at all sorry that this was such a long breakdown. It's just such a good game. I will see you back here for the full episode with the rest of this week's games in a day or so. And of course, projections, scores, and more will be ready for you to use as you wish on Wednesday the 4th. I have not stopped working on the newsletter as well. I am on it, all over it. Thank you so much for hanging out. And if you like the show, please like, subscribe, and pass it along so we can continue to grow.